There is a class of creatures in the world that have been discovered by a few, but whose existence has not been proven. We collectively refer to these creatures as unidentified mysterious animals, or UMA for short. Hello everyone, and welcome to the UMA video series. In the western United States, in California, lies an ancient and mysterious land, the Santa Lucia Mountains. Its magnificent natural scenery has made it one of California's top tourist destinations. But at the same time, a chilling legend also adds a touch of mystery to these profound mountains. For centuries, people in this land have occasionally seen strange, humanoid figures appearing and disappearing on the ridges, like visitors from another world. And this brings us to today's topic: the humanoid phantoms from American West folklore, the Dark Watchers. The name Dark Watchers originates from the Spanish equivalent. Legend says that these mysterious beings appeared long before the Spanish arrived in California in the 18th century. The mythology of the local indigenous people, the Chumash Indians, also contains records of these figures. When Anglo-Americans claimed sovereignty in the region, they even felt they were being watched by mysterious eyes from the mountains. The Dark Watchers are usually described as giant humanoid phantoms, tall in stature, ranging from 7 to 15 feet in height. Some descriptions also mention they wear a black cloak, a wide-brimmed hat, and hold a staff in their hand. They will appear at dusk or dawn, standing silently on a ridge or peak, watching those who walk on the trails. But when people try to get a closer look, they vanish without a trace in an instant. This legend is especially prevalent in the coastal regions of Western California, from Monterey in the north down to Avila Beach, especially in the Big Sur area. People fear the dark figure standing on the mountaintop, as it symbolizes misfortune. Regarding the Dark Watchers, the most famous written account comes from the 1938 short story collection The Long Valley by American author John Steinbeck. In the book's third chapter, the story Flight tells of a 19-year-old boy named Pepe, who while out getting medicine, accidentally kills a man in a drunken stupor. When he returns home, his mother tells him to flee on horseback and instructs him, "When you get up into the high mountains, if you see the Dark Watchers, do not go near them and do not try to talk to them." Soon after Pepe enters the mountains, he sees the thing. The original text goes like this: Pepe looked back uneasily every minute or so, and his eyes sought the tops of the mountains ahead. Once, on a white barren ridge, he saw a dark figure, but he looked quickly away, for it was one of the Dark Watchers. No one knew who they were, nor where they lived, but it was better to ignore them and never to show interest in them. They did not bother a man who stayed on the trail and minded his own business. As evening approached, when Pepe looked up again toward a barren peak, he saw the Watcher, the figure of a man standing on a rock. He looked quickly away, to appear not to have seen. A moment later, when he looked up again, the dark figure was gone. In 1937, in the poetry collection Such Counsels You Gave to Me, written by American poet Robinson Jeffers, based on a Scottish ballad, it is written, "When he was near the slopes of Horan Peak, he seemed to see a person by the mountainside, silhouetted against the mountains, gazing intently into the valley. This young man's tired and dull brain, having grown up in the mountains and been educated in the city, smoothly recalled his bygone childhood. He thought it might be one of the watchers that often haunt this coastal mountain range. To human eyes, they look like people, but they are certainly not human. They come over the ridges to watch." But when the young man approached him, he recognized the worn-out clothes and pale hair, and even the slanted forehead and the hollow from the eyes to the chin. So when the figure turned to him in the quiet twilight and revealed its face, he was not surprised. A more obscure account comes from the 2006 book Weird California, edited by American conspiracy writer Greg Bishop. It says that in the 1960s, a local high school principal, while hunting in the Santa Lucia Mountains, spotted a dark, humanoid figure wearing a hat and a long cloak, standing on a rock in a canyon.
slowly observing its surroundings. But when the principal called out to the other hunters, the phantom vanished in an instant. In 2014, the son of the previously mentioned American author, Thomas Steinbeck, along with California artist Benjamin Brode, published a book titled In Search of the Dark Watchers: Landscapes and Lore of Big Sur. The book records John's childhood encounter with the Dark Watchers, as well as the testimonies of his grandmother, Olive Hamilton, and Billy Post, a descendant of early Big Sur settlers. They firmly believed that the Dark Watchers exist. They were a mysterious group known to Native Americans and Spanish settlers who lived in the mountains and canyons of Big Sur. Grandmother Olive even had interactions with the Dark Watchers, such as leaving them fruit, walnuts, and flowers, and would receive feathers, shells, and pine nuts from them in return. But because this book has not yet been released into the public domain, I can only learn about its general content from some book reviews and summaries. In reality, complete eyewitness reports of the Dark Watchers are not very common. Aside from the aforementioned artists' indirect portrayals of this figure in their writings, most records of seeing the Dark Watchers come from scattered replies on internet blogs. The only systematic collection or information gathering from witnesses comes from a website called Dark Watchers. On this website, almost all of the information revolves around the Dark Watchers. And in the sightings section, it records accounts such as one from 2013 by a witness from San Mateo named Elizabeth Benitez. She reported seeing the phantom near the San Luis Obispo Reservoir. That day, she and a friend were driving back from Los Angeles when they suddenly spotted a very large humanoid figure standing on a distant mountainside. It wore a black cloak like the Grim Reaper, was leaning next to a pool of water, and held a staff in his hand.
Both of them reported seeing the thing. The sighting lasted for about 5 seconds. They affirmed that the Dark Watchers exist. In the same year, in Hollister, California, a man named Brian also saw the dark figure. He described that it wore a huge shawl, had very broad and straight shoulders, was slightly hunched, and was about 10 feet tall, and so on and so forth. These sighting records on the website are mostly from unknown sources. The few reports that have links also originate from blogs and forums, so their credibility is questionable. As for whether the Dark Watchers are a real physical entity, or some kind of supernatural phenomenon, or simply an accumulation of lies, the opinions of the public and scholars are not unified. In 2016, American skeptic Brian Dunning analyzed the story of the Dark Watchers in his blog. He believes the entire Dark Watchers phenomenon may have originated from imaginative fabricators, because almost all media that mention this topic one-sidedly point to 3 pieces of evidence: John Steinbeck's flight, Robinson Jeffers' poetry, and the myths passed down through generations of the Chumash people. But in reality, the Chumash Indians do not seem to have any legends about the Dark Watchers. Here he cites the 1975 book, December's Child, a book of Chumash oral narratives by American anthropologist Thomas Blackburn. This is perhaps the most detailed and authoritative study of Chumash culture to date. It includes nearly all of the Chumash myths and beliefs, but there is no mention of the so-called Dark Watchers. The only thing mentioned that is somewhat similar is a creature called the Nunashish. The Chumash believed that the earth we inhabit is an island surrounded by the sea, belonging to the middle world. Celestial bodies like the sun and moon belong to the upper world, while the Nunashish come from a foul lower world. They enter the middle world at night to spread disease and misfortune. This is a strange creature that can transform into human form, but there are no records of it being black or having a habit of standing on peaks to look down on everything. The Chumash culture, like most Native American cultures, believes in a being that can shift between animal and human forms, which is what we know as the Skinwalker belief. Brian believes that before 1937, no publications ever mentioned the Dark Watchers. This could mean that this is an urban legend created in the 20th century. A second, more popular theory is that some mountaineers and scholars believe the so-called Dark Watchers are actually a rare Brocken Spectre phenomenon, also known as a glory. This is an optical illusion where a shadow cast by a strong light source onto a distant surface causes the apparent size of the shadow to be magnified. We explain this phenomenon in our episode on the Big Gray Man of Ben Macdui. Indeed, aside from the fact that the Dark Watchers make no footsteps, the other descriptions are extremely similar to the Big Gray Man. On the Dark Watchers website, there's a sighting report from 2018. It says that while hiking on Highway 33 in Ojai, the witness felt they were being watched. They immediately looked up to the mountaintop and saw the black figure. They jokingly waved at the shadow, and to their surprise, the shadow performed the same action back at them. So they took a puff of a cigarette and saw the figure exhale a puff of smoke as well. This description is nearly identical to the witness's encounter in the Big Gray Man. Canadian psychologist Graham Reed, in his 1972 book, The Psychology of Anomalous Experience, stated that fatigue often disrupts people's logical judgment, making them more susceptible to suggestion and prone to hallucinations and misinterpretations, especially for the giant phantom figures witnessed in the mountains. Fatigue and loneliness may be the main reasons why hikers and mountaineers report anomalous experiences. In fact, if we analyze the possibility of the Dark Watcher's existence as a humanoid creature, I think it is very small. First, as Brian Dunning said, I couldn't find any related written records before the 1930s. Keywords in both English and Spanish yielded no results. As for the online claim that this Chumash rock art depicts the Dark Watchers, that is also inaccurate. This rock art actually depicts children and the sun, symbolizing the celestial team playing a gambling game on the eve of winter's arrival to predict whether there would be a food shortage in the coming year. While the instantaneous disappearance and synchronized movements suggest that the Brocken Spectre theory is likely the most rational and scientific explanation for the Dark Watchers. As for the features like the dark figure wearing a wide-brimmed hat and holding a staff, I believe they most likely come from variations and exaggerations as the story was passed down. It's like an urban legend that is constantly being embellished. In today's era of rapid technological development, our attitude towards these unidentified mysterious animals has gradually become more rational. But this doesn't mean these legends will disappear. On the contrary, they will continue to be passed down in folklore as a part of culture, becoming topics of conversation for people in their leisure time. So let's continue to hold a curious and reverent heart to discover and experience the wonder and mystery of this world. All right, with the Springfest upon us, I, Lee Mann, would like to wish all my friends watching a new year filled with success and prosperity. At the same time, I'd like to thank Hanshioshi for the research support on this episode's content. Finally, the same old saying, the unknown will always be greater than the known. And that is the charm of UMAs. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.